as parliamentarians. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
I call Carmel Sepuloni.
Mr Speaker, I just want to endorse that, everything that's been said by Megan Wood and just acknowledge those working for the offices of Parliament. I think we all agree across the House that they do a very hard job, that they are stretched, Mr Speaker. And the office that I want to talk about in particular that we all know has been stretched really beyond capacity is the office of the Ombudsman, Mr Speaker. And Mr Speaker, actually just a few moments ago, I just recalled a friend of mine who works in the media and was wondering, as we were having this discussion and I was listening to the other speakers, whether or not he'd finally had his OIA request responded to. And I just want to relay this person's request for information, Mr Speaker. They made their official information request to MFAT in May 2012. They asked for an extension, well, MFAT did, then another, and then stopped replying to that person's emails. That person then complained to the Ombudsman in July 2012. Since then, he's had a few letters of apology from the Ombudsman's office with regards to the time it's taken. The last letter was December last year, saying that he'd have regular progress updates. It's nearly May and he hasn't heard anything. And the last letter, Mr Speaker, said, "We sincerely regret the delays you have experienced, which has been a result of a high caseload and resourcing constraints." 3 years on, no response to an Official Information Act request, Mr Speaker. That should be of concern to all of us, particularly as I know what the Official Information Act request was for, and there are health and safety implications for citizens with regards to it. So this is the problem. It's not just about seeking information and a response, but there are repercussions for citizens when we don't get the information that we seek. So, Mr Speaker, this is a real issue, and I want to note there has been an increase, a slight increase in funding for the Office of the Ombudsman, but there was considerable dispute in the committee over the level of funding that should be given. Every single one of us here in opposition have experienced difficulties with getting the information that we require. The office is under pressure because there has been a huge increase in Official Information Act requests, and I want to say, Mr Speaker, that from our perspective, much of that is due to the fact that we're not getting responses to our written questions that we're putting through to the ministers, or we're getting fobbed off by the ministers when we put questions through. And so when we don't get it through written question, then we have no choice but to seek that information through Official Information Act requests. It's time consuming, it's resource consuming, but we have a responsibility as the opposition to hold the government to account, as would they, National, if they were in opposition, and we need to live up to the expectations of the public in doing that, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I, out of curiosity, just went through the media in the last year to look at the extent of this problem, to see where there have been articles in the paper outlining the issues around getting official information under this national government. And Mr Speaker, I'm going to read some of the headlines because it really paints a picture of the state that things are in at the moment. So we've got EQC tries to conceal report on its failings, Health Ministry under spotlight and Ombudsman's OIA review. We've got an editorial about how information is critical and that we're not receiving it. We've got from the Dominion Post in December 2014, Information Act overdue for overhaul. We've got New Zealand Herald, December 2014, OIA review must get stuck in. We've got PR staff numbers up despite promises. We've got heads should roll if information is withheld. I think that's a really interesting headline. Heads should roll if information is withheld. And I want to say that that government is responsible, no one else, that government. I want to say we've got another headline here, abuse of OIA disgraceful. We've got the Daily Post saying, don't you dare release anything, which is what their experience has been with that government. We've got even a headline, Mr Speaker, from the Bay of Plenty Times that says Slater got papers denied to reporters. So it just goes on and on. There's so many more here, Mr Speaker, but it paints a picture about the fact that despite the fact we are a democratic nation, that we're not being given the information or the transparency or the access to information that we should be given in a democratic country. It's not just about us having access to that information in terms of as being opposition, but it is actually just general members of the public, any of the other agencies out there seeking information, our journalists, all of whom are having difficulties with this. Now, Mr. Speaker, I do want to note, because I do sit on the committee, that that actually there was a discussion, there has been a discussion, it is alluded to in the report, that there does need to be a review, an external review of the Ombudsman's office and what is required there in terms of resourcing. That is something that we should all support. I think that's something that will be supported across the House, including by the national government, because the number of complaints that are coming through have gotten to the point where it's just completely unmanageable. When you've got a journalist who puts through an Official Information Act request in 2012 and is still waiting 3 years later in 2015, when there are health and safety implications with respect to the information that he's after, or possible health and safety implications for citizens, then there's real concerns, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, over the past few years, we note that there have been more resources put into the Ombudsman's office, but the level of resourcing hasn't been adequate. That inquiry is going to be essential for finding out what level of resourcing is required and where we can do things better, so that we don't have 3-year waiting periods for information from the for Information Act requests. So, Mr. Speaker, I will leave it at that. Thank you.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.